Good afternoon. My name is Kim Ponzio, and I want to welcome you to the Society of Wetland Scientists February 2020 webinar, where we'll be learning about how certification of professional wetland scientists can improve wetland practice around the world. For those of you who may not be familiar with our SWS Webinar Series, I want to give you a quick overview of our program. We hold our webinars monthly, usually on the third Thursday of the month, which is completely free to SWS members. And then once each quarter, we open up our webinars and offer them free to the non-members and the public. And as you can see from this flyer, we have both our regular SWS Webinar Series in English, and recently we've added quarterly webinars offered in Spanish. Another expansion of our program is the development of wetland interviews, of which we expect to hold our first in English in the coming weeks. So make sure you keep that on your radar. And to support our expanding programs, we've opened up the opportunity to the wetland community for sponsorship of our regular SWS Webinar Series. We're limiting it to just 4 annual sponsors for maximum impact, and these 4 organizations will be promoted prior to, during, and after our webinars. So if you're interested in learning more, please contact our committee member in charge of the sponsorship program, Roy Massaros, at the email listed here, or you can also contact the SWS office. We kicked this off just last month, and we already have 2 of the 4 lucky sponsors. So we're proud to announce that our 2 SWS Webinar Series for 2020 sponsors are the Water Resources, Hydrology, and Hydraulics Education Group, which is a nonprofit that shares information on water resources, hydrologic, and hydraulic engineering to help educate and build a better tomorrow. And the Whittington Group, which is a natural resource consulting firm that balances regulatory compliance with sound ecological management. So you can find their information on the websites listed on this slide. Again, my name is Kim Ponzio. I'm a past president of SWS and the current chair of the SWS Webinar Committee. And I'll be your moderator today. And before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items for those of you who may not be familiar with the GoToWebinar platform. The general format for our webinar is a 45-minute presentation by our speakers, followed by approximately 15 minutes for questions and answers. And at any time during the presentation, if you look at your control panel, you'll see there's a questions pane. And you can type your questions at any time, and I will pose those questions to the presenter at the end of the presentation. And also, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll receive a link to the recording following the webinar. And we also ask that when you finish the webinar, you will receive an evaluation survey, and we hope that you'll fill that out to help us plan our future events. And if you'd like a copy of today's slides to make some notes or to recall what you saw, you can go to the handouts pane and find a PDF copy in that handouts pane. And if you're tech savvy, unlike me, I'm not, you can tweet about today's webinar at #SWSWebinar. This webinar is applicable for continuing education credits that can be applied to your Professional Wetland Scientist certification or renewal or other certifications. And you can get documentation of your participation in this webinar through a now automated process. There will be an email initiated from Michelle Chosek, our SWS Managing Director, that you'll get within 24 hours after the webinar. And make sure you check your spam folder if you don't see it and you want to go ahead and get that participation certificate. You can also get participation certificates for the webinars that have been recorded. So you can go, like you can see on this slide, to the past webinars page, and go there and go get your participation certificate. So with the logistics and the housekeeping out of the way, let's get started with our webinar. So I'd like to introduce our 3 speakers for today. Robin Myers will be speaking first. She is a certified professional wetland scientist with over 20 years of experience conducting wetland delineation, assessment, technical studies, and environmental evaluations. Her experience includes employment with local jurisdictions for regulatory review, land use assessment, code revision, and critical area compliance. And this experience provides a strong framework in understanding statutory requirements for local, state, and federal compliance. She has completed projects in a number of regional areas in King, Pierce, Mason, Kitsap, Jefferson, and Clallam County, and accomplishments in a broad spectrum of project review, documentation, and implementation to include capital improvement projects, critical area ordinance code revisions, land management, and resource management. Her career includes scientific studies as a habitat biologist, a regulatory review under state and local permitting agencies, grant writing, coordination and compliance for nonprofit organizations, and private consulting services. Robin is currently seated on the Society of Wetland Scientists Professional Certification Program Board as the Secretary General. Next up, we will have Matthew Simpson speaking, and he has a special accolade today because today is his birthday, so he chose to spend it with us. And I think afterwards, because it's a little bit later over there in the UK, he will be celebrating his birthday. Matt has over 20 years experience in delivering nature conservation, research, assessment, and management related projects, and is an accredited professional wetland scientist. Matt is currently the president of the Society of Wetland Scientists Europe chapter, president of the SWS Professional Certification Program, and is a long-standing member of the Constructed Wetlands Association Committee. He also sits on the Ramsar Convention on the Wetland Scientific and Technical Review Panel and their Wetland City Accreditation Independent Advisory Committee. Matt has managed projects all over the world in Europe, Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, and North America. He is the director of 35% Limited that delivers ecosystem assessment and management related projects around the world for clients ranging from private companies to governments to international agencies. And Matt is also a director of the Cobra Collective that promotes and supports community-owned solutions that recognize indigenous knowledge and best practice for the benefit of marginalized communities. Our third speaker is Ben LePage, and Ben, for the last 30 years, has academic and professional work that's focused on better understanding the relationships that exist between climate and environment through a range of spatial and temporal scales that is helping to provide greater insight into global change in the future. Ben spent the first 10 years of his career in academia conducting research on 45 million year old fossil wetland forests in the polar regions of the Northern Hemisphere. His research took him to many sites, modern and fossil, globally, and he left academia to become an environmental consultant where he gained experience with the regulatory side of state and federal regulations in the United States. This led him to become involved in the Society of Wetland Scientists. He chaired the SWS Education and Outreach Committee for several years and then became SWS president in 2012. He later became president of the SWS Professional Certification Program in 2017, and he continues to serve both of those organizations where needed. His academic and professional work has allowed him to see wetlands from many perspectives, and he is now of the opinion that wetlands are a key and essential natural resource, and the preservation and management of these resources must be a priority at the academic, industry, and community levels globally. And Ben believes that the internationalization of this professional certification program is precisely what is needed to address these needs. And he, Matt, and Robin will address the key aspects of this effort in our webinar today. So with that introductions out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and hand over control to Robin, who will be our first speaker. And hopefully all of our technology will work famously today.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So we're super excited to talk today about the Society of Wetland Scientists Professional Certification Program, about what the program is, if you aren't familiar, and the role and opportunities ahead of us to nurture global wetland conservation. The program's mission is basically to serve and represent professionals who practice. Sorry, I've got something I can't get out. 1 second.
There might be a little bit of a lag, Robin.
Okay, so no, I just couldn't get the web stuff off of my screen. So, okay, so our mission is to serve and represent professionals who practice wetland science around the world. A bit of background on the certification program was that it was formed out of the Society of Wetland Scientists, or the Society of Wetland Scientists in 1994. The program was created to serve the public's need to identify qualified individuals who assess and manage wetland resources around the world. Certification signifies that the academic and work experience meets all standards expected by his or her peers of a practicing wetland professional. Our board consists of 5 elected officials and 12 nominating chairs, all of which are voting members. The committees have anywhere from 3 to 8 members, so there's close to about 50 active professional wetland scientist members and a few WPITs, the Wetland Professionals in Training, who volunteer their time to the certification program. The program is accredited by the Council of Engineering and Scientific Specialty Boards. This accreditation requires that the program appropriately meets certification and ethical standards through our operating procedures. So because the certification program is a voluntary certification, being accredited by CESB provides an objective assessment of our credentialing practices tailored specifically for wetland scientists. We have 4 levels of certification, the first being our WPIT, or Wetland Professional in Training. It's the preliminary step for individuals with the education, but those that do not necessarily have substantial work experience. Our Professional Wetland Scientist certification is the professionals who have both education and experience. An emeritus status is one who's retired from the industry, but who wants to maintain their certification. And we also have a senior PWS, and we'll touch base on that at the end of this webinar. So what are the objectives of the program? So basically, our objectives are to establish the professional standards for education, experience, our activity and involvement in wetland science, and a continued education effort of practicing wetland professionals. We have a strong vetting process for all applicants, and we maintain a current registry made available to the public of all members. We process certification renewal requirements, and we support all members by providing ongoing education through advocating pre-approved wetland courses. We maintain a highly confidential and thorough process for enforcing established code of ethics concerns or violations. And the program continues to foster international recognition and collaboration of information for recognizing wetland professionals and work in the field of wetland science. So PWSs have such a powerful role in the long-term sustainability and protection of wetlands. Throughout our careers, we are bound to apply sound management principles in our work. The tools and principles we apply don't always work, and we need to be thorough in our actions to identify all successes and all failures. Even more importantly, we need to be thorough in our management practices to be able to potentially identify the actions or inactions that create the result. So we need to be adaptive and knowledgeable enough to convince all stakeholders of what needs to be done, not necessarily not just what should be done. So when you're a certified PWS, you stand out of the crowd. Certification proves that you have the education, experience, and know-how when it comes to practicing wetland science. Therefore, there's an expectancy of accountability and performance to adhere to standards of professional ethics with regard to our conduct and our practice in wetland science. We are the ambassadors for the resource, we are the ambassadors to the stakeholders, and we're the ambassadors to the next generation of wetland scientists. All of this can be achieved through nurturing and practicing sound science for professional development in wetland conservation. So really the recipe is pretty simple for sound science. First, you have to have qualified professionals doing the work. You must be using peer-reviewed methods and guidance, and the results and conclusions must be verifiable. This is basically an acknowledgeable peer review standard in our industry. So when you use that recipe of sound science, it can be easily applied to multiple sectors and disciplines of wetland-related work. The research and findings from academia can be applied to the industry sector. The results from either of those practices can then be interpreted for developing regulatory standards and policy. When all three disciplines work cohesively, resource protection can be achieved. Remember too that even a failed concept is gained knowledge. The simplistic model, when applied locally over cities and counties and all regions, provides and reflects on our global responsibility to conserve and protect the world's wetlands. Certified PWSs are needed and probably more necessary in all three of these sectors around the globe to be most effective in wetland protection. So how are we getting there? Members of the certification program have been on a steady increase. Since being a PWS basically raises the professional bar for wetland scientists, achieving your certification tells employers, clients, colleagues that knowledge and professional development is of great importance to you. Seeing WPIT numbers following the same trend suggests that mentoring and nurturing the next generation of science is happening. So these two maps basically show our membership distribution in the United States. PWS is to the left, WPITs are to the right. Darker shading means the higher number of certified professionals in those states. We currently have 2,418 certified members with the program. 2,124 are professional wetland scientists, and 294 are wetland professionals in training. So typically, these maps have been useful in presentations in our membership, and in the past we've noted that our international contingency included a handful of Canadians, a few in the UK and Denmark. So it's super exciting to move to the next slide to show you that the program is really starting to get recognized on a global scale. Shaded countries have either PWSs or pending applications in motion. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on to Matt. He's going to talk more about our global outreach, our collaboration, and our opportunities. If I can remember how to do that.
Robin, if you can go to the sharing and say change presenter and pick Matt.
Found it. When I moved it out of the way, it switched.
Excellent.
There you go, Matt.
Okay, hello everyone. Good evening here from the UK. It's very nice to be speaking to you. As Robin says, it's really exciting that the program is expanding internationally, and over the last 5 years, we've been really looking to encourage applications internationally. It's really important, I think, having a professional wetland standard internationally, because having that certification that's recognised across other industries as well as our own is really important. And this certification program is comparable to other professions such as engineering, architecture, landscape, architecture, and it's really important that there is this program and it can be offered internationally. And what it does, as Robin has already explained, it allows all government agencies and the public in countries all around the world to really identify qualified individuals who can then assess and manage wetland resources on their behalf. And I'm really pleased to say wetlands are getting a much higher profile in many countries around the world. Countries such as China have very big programs of wetland protection and conservation. and are improving their environmental standards. And they, as many governments, are really wanting to identify wetland professionals. And so we feel that this certification program can really help in terms of wetland conservation around the world by having this group of professionals that people can recognise and understand will do a good job for them. So one of the other benefits of the program is it really supports and recognises a career in wetland science. And I know for myself here in the UK, wetlands as a discipline wasn't recognised when I was going through my early career in education. And you could do general ecology courses or hydrology courses or geography courses, but there wasn't anything really specific for wetlands. But it was something I was always interested in, and I wish this program had been there kind of for me in my younger years, because I would have definitely gone for it earlier and understood and supported the idea that you can have a career in wetlands. And so we're hoping that this certification program provides that international standard and provides the opportunity for young scientists around the world to think, yes, I can have a career in wetland science. As I mentioned earlier, I think I found for myself, having the certification of Professional Wetland Scientist has really helped when I've gone into projects where you're working with multidisciplinary teams and other disciplines. And people ask what it is, and they recognize that you are certified and qualified specifically in wetlands, and people come to you for any issue related to wetlands. And I think that's very powerful. The great thing about this standard is it includes a whole range of kind of sub-disciplines, if you like, within wetland science. So ecology, hydrology, soil science, educators, whether you're working for an agency or whether you're a consultant, it really brings together everyone that works in wetlands and gives this certification. There is also an opportunity with the program, because even when you're certified, you still have to continue your development and education, and you get these reciprocal opportunities to learn something new about wetlands as your career develops. And currently there's no other kind of really applicable national or international certification scheme of its kind. So this really stands out as an opportunity globally for accrediting wetland scientists. And it really is kind of internationally relevant. I'm really pleased that Professor Wei Ta-Fang qualified as Professional Wetland Scientist fairly recently, and he's talked a lot, and you can see his quote here, about the importance of preservation, conservation and restoration of wetland ecosystems in Asia, and how really the general public still need to understand and be educated about the importance of wetlands. And really the understanding of the social and environmental consequences of biodiversity loss, although it's increasing, is still not there. And this sort of scheme, this certification program, is a great way of really giving a higher profile for wetlands and a higher profile for a career in wetlands, and he sees it as vital. We were lucky enough to go and visit Professor Wei Ta-Fang earlier in last year, and a number of the board members from the professional certification program came and led training courses for young wetland professionals and wetland professionals in training that were hoping to get them onto the scheme. And for instance, Dr. Richard Chin managed to do a great course on wetland delineation, and it's a real opportunity, these exchanges of techniques and information and that link with other professional wetland scientists around the world. And there's a big opportunity for all professional wetland scientists to share their knowledge and experience in other countries. So one of the ways that we're trying to expand the program and get the word out there about the professional certification program is through champions in different regions and different countries. So currently in Southeast Asia, we've got champions in China and Taiwan. In Asia, I'm currently in Sri Lanka. In Europe, in the UK and Denmark. North America, obviously, there's a lot of qualified people in the US and Canada. In Africa, in South Africa, in Latin America, in Mexico, in Oceania, Australia, and then South America in Peru and Colombia. Now, these individuals have kindly agreed to help promote the professional certification program, but they've also volunteered to help with people pulling together their applications. And this is really important because when you're looking at it, particularly from other countries, like myself, sometimes you think, oh, your training might not quite fit with what's been asked when you apply for the certification, but having people in the region that can look at your information and help you sort it and put together your proposal for the certification really helps. And if anyone is interested, either you're already a PWS or you're thinking about becoming a professional wetland scientist and you want to be a champion in a country that we haven't got listed, then that would be fantastic. So please get in touch with us if you do want to do that, because we're trying very hard to raise awareness of the program all around the world at the moment. And one of the barriers we identified, well, a couple of years ago was the cost of applications and renewal for the certification program. And I'm really pleased to say, if you haven't seen, that we now have a two-tier structure between developed countries and developing countries, and hopefully that makes it more affordable for people in other parts of the world, and hopefully we'll get more applications, and the people who are particularly starting out there in their career can see that there's an opportunity to have a kind of a reasonable cost for the certification program. Unfortunately, at the moment, we can only accept applications in English, but we've starting a process to look at how we can support people with other languages, and the board and the committee that review applications are helping people through that process, and your regional champions will be able to assist with that. But in the future, we're hoping that we'll be able to accept applications in a number of different languages. And as the program grows, we will set up regional review boards to help the review committee to understand about education and experience in other parts of the world. So that's our plan for developing the program further. In terms of promoting the certification program, we are trying to reach out to different conferences around the world and big important wetland conferences that are coming up. So in the Europe Society of Wetland Scientists chapter meeting in Wageningen in the Netherlands this May is an opportunity. We'll have a stand there. We'll also have a stand at the major Intercoal Wetland Conference in Christchurch in New Zealand in October, and also one at the Ramsar Conference of Parties meeting in Wuhan in China in 2021. So if you're going to those meetings and you're interested in the program, then please come along and talk to us and discuss any issues you might have or anything, any questions you've got, then please come along. We always have a stand at the main Society of Wetland Scientists meeting. This year is in Quebec, and we hold lots of different training sessions and seminars, and we'd love to meet you. If you're interested and you're unsure but you want to talk it through, then please come and see us face to face at those meetings. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Ben, and he's going to talk about some of the key challenges facing wetlands and wetland conservation, and discuss how the really important role that professional wetland scientists and wetland professionals in training can have in supporting wetland protection and wetland conservation. So hopefully, if the technology works, I'm now passing this across to Ben.
To my screen and hear me. All right, so this goes basically, Matt, thank you very much. This goes in the title of the talk, this goes to the question of why do we need to improve wetland practice around the world, where we're doing a really good job, but we can probably do a little bit better. And this is sort of the nuts and bolts of what a professional wetland scientist can do or could do in terms of the work and some of the things that we do. We're in front of these folks kind of every day. I just lost my. There we go. All right. So what does global change really mean? We've become desensitized to these words.
Excuse me, Ben. This is Kim. Can you go ahead and hit the slideshow? So we're seeing kind of a half screen there. If you hit the slideshow to the right, where the little movie screen is.
Hang on a little moment. Let's just do that. How's that? Is that better?
Well, you need to start the slideshow so we won't see all of the PowerPoint. Uh-oh. There you go. Perfect.
Go. What does that really mean? You know, we've been hearing about global climate change, for the last decade, and we've become desensitized to it. So when we hear those words, we really don't pay attention anymore. You hear about negative impacts of disease and mosquitoes and this and that, and it just kind of rolls off of us. And again, it's one of those things that we're not taking seriously anymore. And the focus is on what can a PWS do in light of global climate change. We're hitting a crossroads globally. So hard decisions are going to need to be made very shortly, and we need good scientists, good professional wetland scientists and WPITs to act as ambassadors, to step up and accept the challenge of some of the work that we need to do. We've got roughly, it's expected that there's probably going to be about 2 billion more people in the next 30 to 40 years, and another 800 million people that are going to be displaced from rising sea levels. So that's roughly about 3 billion extra bodies. I did a back of the envelope calculation, and this is based on the U.S. how much water we use per day, ranging from 20 gallons to 100 and some gallons per day. This is we're probably going to need something in the order of 20 to 140 billion gallons of water extra, and we don't know where that's going to come from. And more importantly, we don't know where to put it. So we're going to need to get much better at recycling the water, some treatment wetlands, basically getting that water back into the ground is a priority, so that we're not, this is not a once through system. This is, we're going to have to think of this carefully, think this through carefully, work with the engineers, work with the folks, work with the landscape architects to develop cities and urban wetlands where the water in these systems are being put back into the ground. You can't literally just put them back into rivers and let them go into the ocean. This is just a map, just to show where the biggest impacts are going to be. Obviously, they're going to be in the flat, low-lying areas. And I like to use the California map because I live in the Bay Area, and that shows the Central Valley. And most of the Central Valley is, I call it the new Mediterranean. There's going to be a lot of water. That whole valley is going to disappear. Our fruit and vegetable crops are going to be gone. So we're going to have to get the entire economy of California is going to be impacted with this or through this. So again, stuff that we need to think about. Stakeholders. Now this is where we need to get a lot better. Stakeholders are everybody that's interested in our projects. Now, folks that have been on wetland projects have had projects that have been successful and projects that have gone south. And for the most part, things work out really well, but people are always interested in what's going on in their neighborhood. And with stakeholders, if they don't want something in their neighborhood, they're gonna make a big stink, and that project may be shelved. You know, I've seen projects that gotten shelved because the community didn't want it. Alternatively, if you've got good community support for some of these projects, then you've got advocates in your corner. There's nothing more powerful than having a community or an NGO or some other stakeholder group that is supporting this project, supporting one of your wetland projects. I can't emphasize this enough. Your stakeholder program should be an element of your wetland program, an important element, not just something in passing. So these are again just some of the points. And again, this is not a one size fits all. You have to really understand the people that you're dealing with. If you're in a Hispanic community, you've got to talk to the community in a lot. You got to use different terminology. You got to use different words than you would say in an African community or a white community. People have different cultures have different perceptions. Excuse me. So you need to do your homework as to who is your key message going to, and are you delivering it in the right way? And that takes time and effort, and you've got to have the right people in place to basically get that right. Okay, so some of the actions we probably need to, as professional wetland scientists, we need to be good mentors. We need to support, encourage WPITs. We need to, basically be teachers. We need to practice and publish. Sound science and wetland journals, all journals, basically getting up and attending conferences, meetings, and webinars is huge. You've got to get in front of people. We've got to do volunteer work and outreach within the community. As I say, part of the stakeholder engagement program doesn't necessarily mean just going and talk to people. Basically, it means getting involved, becoming a part of that community so that they trust you. The biggest thing with the stakeholder group is you need to be trusted. They need to believe that what you're telling them is true, and that you're not just saying this just to say it. Special programs, sponsorships with corporations and companies. Get in front of those companies and ask for sponsorship. And there's a lot of companies that use a lot of water. Water is going to be our Achilles heel moving forward. And the industrial, I didn't show any images on the industrialized use of water. It's immense compared to personal use. It's thousands of gallons per person per day in some of the industrialized nations. And we basically, the one thing we need to do, and Matt will get into this a little later, is we need to bridge the language and communication gap and barriers. We are the liaison between the scientific community and the public. And we've got to distill the science down to what the public understands. But equally as important, we've got to take what the public wants and distill it upward to the scientific community and the people that are doing the work as to what does the community want? What's the community willing to tolerate? So that is, it's a two-way street in that sense. And that's, again, I talked about the community. This also applies to NGOs, regulators, and government agencies. It's, you know, stakeholders are everybody and anybody who's interested in the project. So I think that is my last screen. So I'm going to let Matt do this one. Matt, you should be getting a message.
Thanks, that was great, Ben. I think I've got it. Let me launch it. Ooh, here we go. Yeah, so the big ask, I mean, basically, I mean, it's great what Ben's saying. You know, there are some big issues that are facing kind of wetland science, well, facing everyone. And wetland science has a really important role to play in leading the way, really, in coming up with solutions. And so the big ask, as Ben says, is that we need to act locally, become the world leaders for ensuring the wetlands across the globe are adequately understood by the public and protected, following a globally unified process of sound science. And you know, it's fantastic that the certification program is there to really identify and give recognition to individuals and hopefully help them in promoting the importance of wetlands in any project, in any scheme. But you know, that's the important role that professional wetland scientists have to help support the future of the project on the planet. So the professional certification program has been going for over 25 years now, and I have to say it would be absolutely nothing without the wonderful professional wetland scientists. I mean, it's their hard work, it's their dedication, their professionalism that means that a program like this can exist. And you know, there's a reciprocal relationship because it helps them, but it also helps the program as well, because the program is only as good as the high standard of professionals that are part of it. So a huge thanks to everyone who's become certified and help represents wetland science is very important. There's one kind of way to recognize the contribution that some people have made in particular is, Robin mentioned it earlier, but we've created this Professional Wetland Scientist Senior level, and that is for anyone that has had 20 years of certification. Now that might be 5 years of WPIT and then 15 years of PWS, but anyone out there who has been certified for 20 years will receive this badge as our way of thanking them for their dedication and professionalism over 20 years. So the very last slide, thank you very much, I'll say this now, for listening to us, and I hope you've been inspired. If you're not a wetland professional in training yet, or you're not a professional wetland scientist, I hope you've been inspired to have a look at it and hopefully apply. This is just a checklist. It's on the website, which is there in the top right-hand corner. If you need more information, go to that or email the office and they will help provide you with information. But basically, all you need in terms to become a professional wetland in training is to list your contact information, list your education, and then have 5 references and you can apply. It's a bit different with professional wetland scientists because you're also listing your qualifying experience and you write a statement about your experience. So there's a little bit more to it because professional wetland scientist level is for someone who does have experience of working in the field of wetland science. But please, 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 if you're interested, then yeah, go to the website and get your applications together. That'd be fantastic. Okay, I'm hopefully going to pass back to Kim now, who's going to lead some questions if anyone's got any.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Robin, Matt, and Ben. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen. It should be the contact information. So I just want to let you know again, I'm going to read the questions that you have offered and some of my own through, that you've offered through the question pane. And if you forget to ask a question or you had to leave before the Q&A is over, you can email all three of them, one of them, and their email addresses are listed on this slide. I do think that that Matt wanted to show that other slide, so we'll show it while we're doing the questions and answers. So Matt, I'm actually going to give change back to you because I don't have that slide. So let me change back to you, and then once we're done the questions, I will take back control. Okay? And you may be muted. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to remind everybody who, all of our presenters, that you need to unmute if you want us to hear you. So we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to start with somewhat of a personal question for all three of you. And I want to know what being a PWS has meant to you in your career. Like, when did you become a PWS? And how do you think that's impacted your career as a wetland scientist? So you want to go ahead and start. We can start with Ben, since he's on the left side of the page for me. Ben, are you hearing us? Because we're not hearing you. Uh-oh. Okay, maybe we should start with Robin or Matt. Who wants to go first? Raise your hand. Okay, Robin, go ahead.
All right, so PWS changed my life when I moved from one side of the country to the other. My education was down in Florida. Most of my early work experience was down in Florida, all in wetlands and estuarine habitats. And I, under temporary insanity, moved to Pacific Northwest and found myself in an environment where PWS was very much an emphasis. And I really didn't even know what the PWS was. So my employers were looking at me to get this certification. And so through my own research, going just online to the website for the program, I realized that I had been working the past 10 years surrounded by PWSs, including Kim. And so my PWS application was really seamless and easy because I was fortunate enough to be working underneath so many really smart people who already believed in the certification program. So once I had that just removed that element of people not knowing who I was. I didn't have any education in Pacific Northwest, but I had the credentials. I met all the qualifications. I had worked with and under and for PWSs. So that brought me back up to the playing field so that I could, so I was looking at my colleagues and other peers, and we were at a understood level of professionalism.
Excellent. Matt, do you want to weigh in on that? Yours is probably not quite as long ago, right?
No, it really isn't. It's only a few years, really. But, as I said during the presentation, I would have loved this earlier in my career, and just knowing that there was recognition of wetland science. And it has made a difference since I've got it. A lot of people ask me about it. I work all over the world, and it definitely gives you some kind of standing in the room. On the projects where as I said, where it's multidisciplinary, you've got, certified engineers, you've got certified architects or whatever, and I can go, yeah, I'm a certified professional wetland scientist, and it does make a difference. And so I think going forward, as more kind of countries recognise it, and already I've talked to people here in the UK, some of the government agencies, they're like, oh, this is perfect. We're going to put it in as part of our tendering process that, you'll get extra points if you're a professional wetland scientist. And I think that will happen. That's great. Yeah, and I think that will happen, in other parts of the world as the program gets further recognised. And we're trying to get it more recognised through the Ramsar Convention as well, which will, only increase that visibility of the program. So Yeah, I'm new to it, but Ben's saying as a message.
He's got, I can't see what it says. Put it back
He's
up
saying,
there, Ben.
unmute, he's saying.
Unmute.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't have you muted.
So
So you want to know how to unmute? Go to your go to webinar panel, and there's a little phone thing there that shows it's green if you're talking and it's red if you're muted.
And you're unmuted.
Oh, and Tony is saying you're unmuted.
Okay, great. Yeah, the organizer muted me, so I couldn't undo it.
Okay, you're good. No, you're not mute anymore. Go ahead and speak, Ben.
So the question was, well, I got involved in the wetland sciences when I left academia and got into consulting. And my background as a geologist was paleo and as a botanist. So I've been working on coal deposits all over the planet, looking at ancient deposits. And by happenstance, these were all ancient wetlands. So I knew the plants really well. So making the transition from geology into wetland sciences was really, really quite easy because I knew all the plants, I knew all the Latin. It was easy, and I got involved with the wetland plants and with the excuse me, with the wetland sciences, and it got me a lot more interested in things like linking the global climate change elements together with the wetlands, and things like you start thinking about traditional ecological knowledge and how cultures evolved with wetlands. It weaves a really interesting cultural and historical study or history that I've really gotten quite interested in. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been one heck of a journey. And I wouldn't, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do it the same way.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ben. I did want to say, I think I've had several WPITs or folks that have been working in wetland science ask me to be either their sponsor or give them a reference. So that's, can you guys talk about the process a little bit? What people have to do other than show their transcripts, that type of thing? What are some of the kind of on that checklist? What are some things that you can elaborate on? Raise your hand if you want to answer that question. Okay, I think Matt.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, basically what you have to pull together is your courses, particularly the ones relevant to wetlands in different disciplines. So, potentially hydrology, ecology, or whatever. You have to show information of that, particularly for professional wetland scientists. Ideally, you have the transcripts of your courses as well as your certificates of qualification. Now, we have had some problems with some individuals who qualified many, many years ago, and in some countries where they didn't keep, records of the courses, and we've managed to kind of get around that situation by getting universities to sign off on what courses there were without actually having the transcripts. So there are kind of ways around it, but you need to pull that information together. Getting the 5 references is important. Ideally, they're from an existing PWS, that's why you will have been contacted, Kim, but also from an SWS member. But we have got situations when, again, in some countries that's very difficult for people, so we've managed to accept that. I think the really important thing is to go to the website, see what information is there. If you feel you haven't got everything that you need, then please email us and we will look at that for you, because there are kind of ways around this, some of it in terms of, understanding the experience and qualifications, particularly from, other countries where it's a slightly different system. And we've managed to still get the evidence that's required for the review committee to accredit people. So it's best to head to the website, check out the lists of what's needed, and then if you think you're missing something, to get in contact with us.
Okay, I think Ben raised his hand. He wanted to say something. Ben? Oh, we're not catching what you're saying.
Getting the references is always tough for WPITs. Come to the SWS meetings. You're gonna find a lot of and this is a good thing. It helps you network. And you're gonna, we got a lot of PWSs there, and who are happy to help and mentor students and help mentor PWSs. Potential PWSs. That's huge.
Robin, did you want to add to that?
I did, and there's also any board member, if you don't have enough references, any board member, you contact our business office, they'll connect you with a board member. That board member will interview you and look at your resume and your credentials and can offer a letter of reference. So there have been occasions like that where we've had people practicing and they're really not PWS around them in their region. So that's always an option as well. If you have any questions, call our business office. No question is a dumb question, and they certainly will find you the resources. They either have them or they'll find the resources to get you where you need to go.
And I think I want to add to that. I had a colleague of mine ask me, I went to college before there were really wetland focused courses, which many of us did. And, you can look at what content, if it's a hydrology course or an ecology course or something like that, that would be related to wetlands. And again, like Matt said, that we can take a look at that. The other thing is that they have had over 15 plus years of working in wetlands 100% of the time. So, it's your application will be considered as a whole in trying to meet all those criteria. If you've been working in the wetland profession and you have all of the credentials to do that. One other thing I want to ask about is how can you get your employer involved in this?
I think from the standpoint of the employer, if in the consulting world, if you are going after contracts, some contracts now, at least in the US, now they may be different in other parts of the world, but some contracts will require the wetland scientist to be a professional wetland scientist. That basically the drawings and ultimately the if you're creating or restoring are going to have to be signed and sealed. That's a requirement, and I know it's becoming a lot bigger in the U.S. So we're moving in that direction, very similar to what an engineer or geologist, what a professional engineer, professional geologist would need to do to their reports. So
does the PWS have an official seal?
Yes. And ours is much cooler.
It's cooler. Matt, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, no, I just I think if you're working in wetlands a lot, obviously my career's been in wetlands. If you're working in them a lot, I think it's very easy to persuade your employer to recognise it. My last two employers paid for my certification and my renewal. They covered the cost of it because they realised how important it was in terms of having a member of staff that is certified. So, that's another thing to ask your companies out there, people who are listening now, ask them whether they will support, talk about the program, talk about how important it is, and say, will you financially support it? Because you might not even have to pay for it out of your own pocket.
To add to that.
And I'm gonna weigh in here too, because I have worked for a state agency for my entire career, so I've not been in academia or. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben. Were you talking?
That's fine. We were talking over one another. You go ahead.
Oh, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. But I was saying that I work for a state agency, and we are not required to have this certification. However, it really lends credibility because we are hiring consultants that are needing to be professional wetland scientists, and we are engaging with universities and academia projects that are, this actionable research that we need for managing the wetland ecosystems. And so it's something that they have supported since I started, and I get that one of those pins because I've been a PWS since 1995, and the Water Management District has supported me in that since that time. So it just adds legitimacy to that, and it makes, we talked about stakeholders. I think it gives stakeholders the information that they need to know, that you know what you're talking about when it comes to managing these systems, and also spending taxpayers' money to actually research and figure out how to manage these systems, these wetland systems. So I'm going to ask one more question because it's just about 2 o'clock. Let me see if I can maybe kind of round this out in the internationalization effort that we're doing and getting champions. How would someone find out how they can become a champion? And I know of one WPIT or WPIT potential that's going to be, that is a champion. So you don't have to already be a PWS, or you don't already have to be a WPIT to be a champion. So maybe you can tell me about who can do that and how they can do that.
Okay, so really we're looking for as many people as possible across the globe to become champions of the program and promote it. Particularly to go to regional conferences and meetings. It's really important. So if you are thinking of applying, or you've already applied for certification, then it'll be really great to get in contact with anyone on the board, but myself in particular. And what we're trying to do is identify some board members that will coordinate with specific champions. So please just get in touch, and we can then kind of help you by sending resources and identifying ways that you can help promote the program. And if you're thinking of applying, we can help you with your application process as well. That's really important. So just get in touch.
Okay, Robin?
I also want to add, if you aren't PWS, or if you are PWS or WPIT, if you're currently already working out of the country anywhere, under your current employer, reach out to us. Get us some contacts. We can, if you have those connections in those countries, again, we can just foster your own application. We can give you the resources to really spread the news, have those conversations, get the right people to the table, to have the conversations to support the program. So reach out to the business office and they'll get you in touch with one of us.
Great. Matt, would you change the presenter back to me so that I can go ahead and finish up our webinar? Okay, I'm going to show my screen. Again, here are their email addresses so that you can email them about how to become a PWS, how to become a champion. And I want to thank Robin, Matt, and Ben for taking your time out of your schedule. I know you guys are really busy, to share your expertise and insights on the SWS Professional Certification Program. Before we sign off, I have a couple of announcements of upcoming SWS events. Make sure you mark your calendar for our next SWS webinar about invasive plants and wetlands, which will be held on March 19th. And also our next Spanish SWS webinar will be held on March 25th. And this will be about Mexican mangroves, which is based on Dr. Dominguez paper from the Wetlands Journal in 2019. And remember, the Spanish webinars are offered free of charge to members and non-members alike. And then finally, be sure to subscribe or follow SWS on all our social media channels like Facebook and LinkedIn. And also, we have a YouTube channel. So if you missed any of the webinars, all of our webinars are posted there 3 months after their original broadcast. And they also have multilingual subtitles. So go ahead and click on that link and go there. Also, if you're Spanish speaking, be certain to subscribe to the Latin America and Caribbean region's Facebook page. And finally, again, thanks again to Robin, Matt, and Ben for your presentation. And thank you to our audience for participating today. So have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Audience who's listening, appreciate the time you took to listen to us. And if you've got any questions, by all means, reach out.